Hello, my name is John James and I am a writer and campaigner for male victims of female perpetrated domestic violence and an advocate for men's mental health. This week on FTD Talk, I talked to Kirby Lewis about his breast cancer and about the other cancer that he had. We talk about how much more difficult it was because he was a man having breast cancer, how people don't understand, how the medical profession don't understand. We also talk about recovery, and Kirby is a very, very funny man, and his positive mental attitude is amazing. And he'll talk to you about how to emotionally and psychologically deal with having cancer. I so enjoyed talking to Kirby, and I think you'll really enjoy listening to him. So educate yourself by listening. And it's very, very interesting too. So I think you'll really enjoy it. Before you go, don't forget to press that like button, smash that subscribe button. The bigger the channel gets, the more people I can help. You take care now. Take care of each other. Peace. Okay, Kirby, welcome to FTD Talk. And before we get into the real subject, could you tell us a little bit about yourself before the cancer?
Sure. I was I don't want to say a starving artist, but my wife would probably agree with that definition. But I was, pretty successful as a designer and an artist. When you do artwork, you kind of get into the mode that you're a prostitute for anything that comes down the road. So you do little doodles and drawings for anybody that asks and are willing to pay $10 or $15 or $20, and then you do oil paintings and sculptures for those businesses and commercial uses that are willing to pay a lot more. And I benefited from both, and I've had a really I'm very flattered and very honored to have had the career in the art world that I've had. Prior to that, I've always been an artist from the time I was 5 years old. I don't know how much time your program allows for, John, but thank you very much for having me here today. I really do appreciate it. And I can tell you a story about my passion for art. And I bring this up because I think passion in life is a vital element to living a good life. And so when I was 5 years old, I used to like to draw cartoon characters, Aquaman and Spider-Man and Batman and things like that. And my parents lived up on a hillside. We live in West Virginia. So you either live on the top of the hill or the bottom of the hill in West Virginia. At least that's the old joke, right? And so we were fortunate. We lived at the top of the hill and out in the country. There were very few neighbors and we had no foot traffic whatsoever. And I decided one day that I was going to have an art show on the side porch of my parents' home. Needless to say, at 5 years old, I didn't have any kind of an advertising budget or anything like that. So my grandmother, who lived about 2 miles away, she called me up as she always did. And she said, "What are you into today?" And I said, "Well, I'm having an art show, but so far I don't have anybody here yet, but they'll come." And it wasn't more than 15 or 20 minutes later, and she and her neighbor lady showed up, and I had a complete sellout of my first art show at 5 years old. So I like to tell that because it kind of set the tone for me as an artist. It impassioned me and empowered me, and I just grew as an artist from there. And since that time, I've really never had another art show. After all, when you have your first one such a success, why have a second one?
And what was your health like before the cancer?
I had a couple of heart attacks. I'm a big guy. I I had been in the Navy, had a stint in the United States Navy, and when I got out of that, I went to work for the federal government. And during that time, it was a very stressful position with I won't name the organization, but I'll give you the initials, the IRS. Now, it was, but it was a stressful position. And I think that probably attributed to my heart attack. But aside from that, I was in fairly good health. I stayed busy, active, always guard things of this sort. So aside from the heart issue, but that was, like I said, probably brought on from stress, although I am a big guy. And also there was a hereditary aspect of that as well. Mm-hmm. But aside from that, relatively good health. I guess people with heart issues can have good health.
And how did you actually discover that you had breast cancer, or suspect that you had?
Well, this is, my wife and I have been married now. This year it'll be 34 years, and I'll tell you, or 35 years in August rather. And I will tell you this, that you don't get through any successful marriage for a long period of time without injecting a little humor. So bear that in mind as I tell you this. I had a very persistent cough. This was in March of 2012. I had a very persistent cough and congestion in my chest. And I just attributed it to allergies. And, that's kind of what I thought it was. At first, I thought it was a cold, but it lingered for so long. I thought, well, it's the change of seasons and perhaps it's an allergy related type thing. So one night late, my wife and I had been already gone to bed, and I wake up coughing and I needed to set up. And when I did, I grabbed my chest and I noticed a lump immediately on my left breast. And for whatever reason, I have no family history of breast cancer, no family history of any type of cancer. Mm-hmm. But for whatever reason, I just really suspected that I had breast cancer. And so I immediately woke up my wife. And there's an old saying here in the States that says, "Don't poke the bear." I don't know if it's a colloquialism in England or not, but it is here. And so it was never more true that night than it was when I woke her up. And she said, "This better be good." And I said, "Honey, I found a lump in my breast." She says, "Oh my goodness." She said, "Go back to sleep." She said, "You've got breast cancer and I've got prostate cancer." So we joke about it. Of course, thankfully, she didn't have prostate cancer, or it would have been a whole new definition of our marriage. But the times they are changing, so you never know. But so anyway, so the next day I contacted my physician and followed up with a series of tests, and each test that I had came back. Inconclusive or with abnormalities. And the more tests that I had, the more confirmed that I was to myself that in fact I did have breast cancer. Mm-hmm. And so we finally found out about April 14th or 15th, something like that, of 2012, that indeed I did have cancer of the breast. And so my doctor was insistent. It was through the Veterans Affairs facility, and he was insistent that he perform the mastectomy, but he had no facility there at that hospital to do so. But he assured us that he was in the process of getting that. And so we kind of drug it out for another 6 weeks, which I wasn't too happy about, nor was anybody in our family too happy about. Mm-hmm. And we finally then went to DC, which is about an hour and a half away from our home. And we saw an oncologist there and a surgeon. And we had the mastectomy, the radical mastectomy of my left breast. And it was discovered then after that it was stage 2. And they had taken some of the lymph nodes there just as a precautionary measure to test those. And I was declared cancer free. And, I recuperated. Now, I like to tell everybody that breast cancer saved my life. And the reason I say that is because in the preliminary routine test that they were getting me ready for this mastectomy surgery, they discovered that I needed to have open heart surgery too. So as soon as the breast cancer surgery, the mastectomy was healed enough, 3 months later, I went in for a 4-way bypass surgery for my heart. And there were complications because of the mastectomy, to be honest. And because of the medicine that I was taking, tamoxifen had driven up my triglycerides to what was defined as industrial strength levels. They had no record of anybody ever having triglyceride levels in the 8,200s. And that's where mine, 8,200. So quite extraordinarily high. And I myself living with that was an anomaly in and of itself. But I survived, and it's part of my story.
Wasn't it true that when you went to the doctor, he said that you can't have breast cancer because you're a guy?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was the first thing that when I went to him initially, he said, "Oh, you don't have breast cancer." He said, "Guys don't get breast cancer." And that was another reason why he's no longer my physician. And, for the longest time, I got to tell you, John, that for the longest time, my mission statement about breast cancer became one that I wanted to empower people to know that men get breast cancer too, that men have breast. Did you know that men have breasts? It's part of our natural anatomy. And did you know that because of that, we're susceptible to breast cancer?
Mm-hmm.
And that became a loud mission statement. And it wasn't until sometime later, actually in 2017, that mission statement changed. And I'll tell you how here whenever we get to that point.
Sure.
Little tease.
And it's funny that you should say that about like men have breasts too, because when I was advertising this show, a guy got in touch with me and went, "No, chest cancer. It's
right.
Chest cancer." So, I'm glad that you've said that. And
I have met, believe me, I've traveled, I've had the wonderful benefit of traveling all over the United States, talking to different groups of individuals, mostly women, but a select few audiences that did have men in it. And I've heard from many guys that same thing. Oh, you mean chest cancer for men? And no, it is not. It's like they don't want to accept the fact that our anatomy in that respect is a breast.
Yeah.
It's an anatomical part of our body is a breast. They have pectoral muscles, and that's certainly different. Our pectoral muscles develop differently than women, although some women bodybuilders develop their pectoral muscles as well. So, but yeah, it is a common misconception, and we're trying to do our best to educate those people that call it chest cancer,
Yeah.
And of course, that's one of the reasons why I'm here today to talk to you and your audience, is to help educate them about breast cancer in males. And I don't like to call it male breast cancer because unfortunately, and this is probably something that will take many, many more years of study through the scientific community before we actually start seeing therapies and medicines and chemotherapies that are developed primarily or specifically for men.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, we are, we're treated just like our female counterparts.
Mm-hmm.
So it is an unfortunate aspect, and I guess there's enough commonalities in the human bodies that we respond similarly. However, because our body chemistries are different,
Yeah.
It certainly stands to reason that eventually, the medical community will catch up, and we will have medical specific opportunities for men with breast cancer.
And you say that we shouldn't really call it male breast cancer. When advertising this show, I've been calling it male breast cancer because breast cancer is so ingrained in the feminine ideology that if I say breast cancer, that's what they think of straight away.
Right. And I think it's a point that needs it demands exploration,
Mm-hmm.
and it demands education.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because, and I'm going to advance now from 2012 to 4 years later,
Mm-hmm.
when I had recurrence. Recurrence occurs, men and women, about 30% of the time.
Yeah.
And so in 2016, I had recurrence, and it came back. It was metastatic. Now, what is metastatic? That is stage 4, and it simply means that the cancer cells have mutated outside of the breast region. You don't die from stage 1, stage 2, or stage 3. Stage 4 metastatic breast cancer is the only cancer that kills you. Right. And, that is, again, another misnomer. A lot of people say, well, they had stage 2 cancer and they died. I can assure you they didn't die from stage 2 cancer. It might have been a contributing factor in their death. It may have weakened their immune system. It may have done a lot of things, but they did not die from stage 2 breast cancer. And so, again, this is all a matter of proper education, proper awareness, and making sure that our audiences hear what we're actually saying, instead of saying, well, you need to drink more tomato juice, or have you tried a grapefruit rub, or whatever the case may be, So from a scientific standpoint, these are what the scientific community relates to us, for those of us that have really embraced the scientific studies of breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And I have really benefited and been very fortunate from that. I took a Project Lead Institute class in La Jolla, California, a couple of years ago with the National Breast Cancer Coalition. And one of the things that was really the most exciting thing about that whole educational process, it's an intense, layman-based, or layman-focused, but scientifically based study
mm-hmm.
of breast cancer, and how so that you can talk educationally and knowledgeably about breast cancer. And the wonderful thing about it, you had instructors and various PhDs that were from MD Anderson and NIH and John Hopkins. And really, I mean, you're talking, some of the great cancer centers in the country that participated. And we actually had presenters from abroad as well, from Germany and from Japan. So, it's very enlightening, and it's made it very interesting. And it also gives you an education from the standpoint so that you can better speak about what happens in the process and how cancer cells mutate,
mm-hmm.
And once you have an understanding of those things, I think it does really lend yourself, or hopefully it does lend yourself to being a better communicator with others, so that they get a better grasp as to what's going on in this terrible disease.
And do you think the education needs to extend to medical professionals? With you, in your case, the doctor didn't believe you had breast cancer because you were a guy. Do you think it was that one doctor that was ignorant, or?
Well, no, I don't, unfortunately. And my case for this is the reasoning behind this statement is because I've spoken to many people in the medical communities that and this just boggles my mind, but we're totally unaware that men even get breast cancer.
Wow.
And so, it's like, really, you have breast cancer? And I'm like, yeah, I do, and guess what? It's not just a woman's disease, it's a man's disease too.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of want to shift gears for a minute, but kind of that's a great lead in opportunity if you allow me to do so.
Yeah. Okay.
As I said, my focus used to be, hey, did you know men get breast cancer? And I shifted that mission statement to a different perspective. And in order for me to fully explain to you how I perceive it now and how I present it now, I need to tell you a little bit of the backstory. And in 2017, I was at a conference in Philadelphia. There were approximately 500 ladies there and a couple of men, not many. I think there was 2 or 3 of us guys that had breast cancer out of 500. So that's, and we were all metastatic, I might add. I spoke with one. So I spoke with a lady. I was going around doing some interviews on behalf of the Male Breast Cancer Coalition, just filming these interviews, kind of really off the cuff, asking questions with people, my newfound friends that I had met. And one of the ladies, I asked her, I said, did you know that men get breast cancer? She said, yes, I knew that. And I asked her, I said, well, have you ever met anybody? And she said, no, you're the first man that I've met that has breast cancer. And I said, so what are you planning on doing now as a result of this knowledge and this awareness? And she said, that's a really good question, because she said, and this was the aha moment for me. This is what changed everything. She said, I have 2 sons. My second son, I was pregnant with him when I became de novo, which is the onset of stage 4. From the very beginning, that was her initial diagnosis, de novo, stage 4 metastatic breast cancer, while she was pregnant. And this happens a lot. You see this very frequently. And she said, and I remember the child being born, and I was so thrilled that it was a boy. Because she said, I thought, oh my goodness, he'll never have to face this. He'll never have to be threatened by the chance of having breast cancer.
Wow.
And like I said, this is the aha moment. Because she said, now I realize I need to go home and get both of my boys, who are now young men, checked.
Yeah.
And, and here's the thing. This is why I no longer just try to focus and talk to men or to talk to women about men. I talk to people and say, this is what's important. We have a little thing called DNA, our genes, genetics. And our genes, while many things are passed on to the X or to the Y chromosomes, our genes genetically don't care about cancer genes and if they're X or Y chromosomes, boy or girl. So that said, don't be concerned about your daughters, be concerned about your children.
Yeah. Very wise. Yeah.
It's no longer a disease that impacts just your daughter or just your granddaughter. But you see, your son while it may never have manifested in him, he could have the genetic disposition to pass those genes on to your granddaughter.
Yeah.
Or to his son, or to your grandson, at which point it would maybe expose itself. So we don't know, but we do know that it is genetic, unless you have environmental impacts that also are contributing factors sometimes. But genetically speaking, X and Y chromosomes don't care. Boys and girls, they don't care about our genes as far as what's in our DNA. And if we have the ability for our these tumors in our body to turn on, to switch on and become cancerous, if we have that ability, they don't care. They don't care if you're a boy or a girl. They just want to get in your body and create havoc. And so, and that's the reason why my mission statement really changed, and why now when I talk to ladies, and I like to talk to ladies about this, because ladies will listen. Men, we have too much machismo. We like, oh yeah, we got chest cancer.
Yeah.
We got chest cancer. You know, that's no. The ladies will listen. They'll listen and they'll make that statement, and they'll take that statement home, and suddenly they're not concerned about just their daughters. Now they're concerned about their children, because they understand, most everybody understands genes and DNA. Maybe not the scientific minutia little bit there that makes the difference, and what makes something turn on and turn off, and is the chromosome chain broken or is it unbroken or what? But these are things that impact, of course, cancer cells, and oftentimes manipulate the cancer cells and turn them on is when a chromosome chain is broken. Could be through a fall, it could be yawning or stretching. It's just something that simple.
Yeah.
But so these things happen. But if you have the propensity, because your grandmother or your grandfather was a carrier of this particular gene, the BRCA1 or BRCA2, okay, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what sex you are. It knows no boundaries.
Yeah.
It is totally unbiased. And so it's no longer really, a lot of times they say, well, that's an old man's disease. Old men get that. Yes, I'm 61, but I was 52 at the time. And let me tell you, 52 is not old.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, my dad had bowel cancer, as well as a lot of other things. And I've had cancer in my family. And to be honest, cancer really scares me. So when you find out that you have it, how do you cope with that emotionally and psychologically?
It's a great question. And you know what? It's not one that I ignore at all. In fact, I have been pursuing a degree in psychology so that I can hopefully aid and help others learn how to cope with the psychological stresses of that diagnosis. And I have often commented to many groups that I've spoken to that I really personally feel that learning how to cope with your diagnosis is as difficult, if not more so, than hearing the initial diagnosis, because it has a time to saturate your brain and to really allows you to contemplate. And when we do, we're all human. We process things so differently, and so it impacts us each differently. If you have a long, strong family history of cancer, like you mentioned, it's going to impact you differently. So how do you process it? All I can tell you is how I process it, and I can give you some suggestions that I hope that you kind of focus and center yourself on, so that you can learn how to cope with these things. But the manifestation that our bodies grab hold of the what ifs in life
Mm-hmm.
can be very debilitating, you know. And so, you know, the first thing that I suggest is, well, how do we get rid of the what ifs? And we have to realize the reality of it is that, you know, I have a terminal disease. I have a terminal diagnosis. And here I am in March of this year, in a little more than a month, I will celebrate 6 years of being terminal cancer diagnosis. I'm pretty proud of that. I'm pretty excited about that. And I stay upbeat about it. Sure, I can get really depressed about it too, because I also am aware that 6 years, what does that mean? Does that mean I have a year left? Does that mean I have 5 years left, or 2 years left, or do I have 20 years left? And so what I try to do is refocus. When my mind goes in that direction, I try to refocus on the positives in my life. I try to make plans for tomorrow, for next week, for this year, and for years down the road. You know, I just purchased a big piece of farm equipment, and not because I'm planning on dying next month. I'm hoping that I get many, many years of use out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, you're constantly, for me, I try to refocus my energy on the positives in life and my blessings in life. And I am a very spiritual person. And I think that having that spirituality, that faith and belief in God, I think that allows me to maintain that positive focus. It allows me to pray in a way and in a manner that allows me to continue to be strong and present in my present body, even though there are many times during the days and weeks, especially after a chemo treatment, which are ongoing always. You know, I just feel blessed. I feel blessed for each day that I have, and I look forward to those things. And I think that positive outlook, and I realize that it's not for everyone, you know, and I understand that. And everybody processes things, you know, so differently. I met a lady that had 5 children, all under the age of 6. And she announced, we were in a breakout session, and she announced to the group that she had prepared her children and told them that she had stage 4 terminal cancer. And what that meant is that mommy's going to die. And the more I listened to it, the more sad I became, not just for her, but also for her children, because I thought, how many days are they going to come home from school wondering if this is the day that mom dies? Yeah. And so afterwards, I kind of talked to her off to the side from everyone else. And I said, I shared with her my concern. And she said, I just wanted to be realistic with them. And I said, I get that. But I said, your children are so young and they're so impressionable. I said, what if you told them, and you didn't maybe go into all of the details of it, but what if you just told them that said, you know, people don't live forever. We all die. Some die young, some die old. Mommies, daddies, your aunts, your uncles, everybody, brothers and sisters, we all die. It's part of life. Mm-hmm. But today, let's go out and make memories. You know? Yeah. And it's that positive spin. And she said, you know, I wish I had talked to you beforehand. I said, well, guess what? Here's a great thing. You know, you can go back. Kids are very impressionable and they're very malleable. You know, they want your love and they want your attention. You know, they desire attention. So sit down and talk to them and say, you know, maybe I don't want to mislead you. You know, everybody's going to die, and have that same story with them, but have a different ending. Instead of saying, I don't want you to worry about mommy today, you know, because we're all going to die. Today, let's go out and play on the playground. You know, let's go out and make sandcastles on the beach. Let's do something. Let's make an apple pie. whatever it is, you know. And I just think that the children, because quite honestly, with the medicines and the continual improvements and great new strides that have been made in the medical community and immunotherapies and chemotherapies and, you know, even on radiation and things, that there's just been so many great improvements that it is not unheard of for people to live 20, 25 years with a stage 4 diagnosis.
Yeah.
At least I'm hoping for that. I'm hoping for more than that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 61 now. You know, I've been living with this diagnosis for 6 years, and I'm really hoping that I get 16 or 20, maybe 25 more years, you know?
Well,
I love it. And I think that that's the other thing too, is I think that when you're talking about coping, so many people, they want to bury themselves in the corner. And they say, oh, I've got a stage 4 diagnosis. I'm dying. Well, yes, but you were dying yesterday too before you got that diagnosis. That's a reality. So you got to be grounded in, you know, you have to be grounded in reality. And a lot of people say, well, you look through everything with rose-colored glasses. I said, no, I try to look through things with the realism, the realistic views that say, hey, you know what? We are all dying from the minute we're born. You know?
Yeah.
So how are we going to live? Because we are not remembered when we die, how we died. We are remembered for the life that we live.
That is, yeah, that's very, very moving and very true as well. I mean, when I went through my trauma, which wasn't cancer, but it was domestic violence, I turned to Hinduism and spirituality to get me through. And it did. I still continue to this day.
Great.
It helps me a lot. And I do think that that positive mental attitude of going forward and living for the moment, living for today, I do think that's very beneficial, very beneficial.
Yeah, I can't stress how valuable the realization is that our life has value today. We may be just an empty body, a soulless body tomorrow. We may be dead tomorrow. Mm-hmm. But today we have life. We're still sucking oxygen. Yeah. We still have the ability to make decisions, good and bad, and memories. That's a fantastic thing right there. Making those great memories with our children, our grandchildren, our loved ones, our families, our best friends, you know. That's the thing that counts more than anything. Not the fact that you have some stupid diagnosis. Yes, of course that's important. And of course, I'm not saying ignore it. I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that you no longer, you know, do or abide by your doctor's wishes or anything like that. But I am suggesting that you have to get your mental acumens in order. You have to get your mental ability to process the value of life, of the value of living.
Yeah.
And once you realize how important that is, that and make plans to live, make plans to enjoy life. Mm-hmm. What happens is those negative thoughts get pushed back. And not that they're going to disappear, because you can always bring them right up to the front. You can always bring them right up to the surface. That's an easy thing. Depression is so easy to bring right there, you know, and it's a challenge to come back. But once you start making plans, once you start living life, you know, and loving the life you're living, I mean, I think it just puts everything into a totally different perspective. And it just makes dealing with this formidable disease, you know, it makes it easier to live with. I am not a negative person. I can be a negative person, but I am not a negative person.
Yeah. I could tell that. We've seen how it impacted you, and we've seen how brave you were and how positive you are. How did it impact your family when they found out?
Yeah. Uh, each person handles things so differently. And there is almost like a learning curve, I think, that happens when we get this diagnosis. For my wife, she was with me, but right beside of me when we got the diagnosis. And it's the first time in almost 40 years that I've known her that she crumbled. You know, it was the first time she fell to her knees. And the first words out of her mouth were, "How do we ever plan anything today?" And immediately, I said, "What did we do yesterday?" I said, "Yeah, we got terrible news today, but guess what? We're still here. Now, how are we going to live with it? What are we going to do to make it the best that it can be?"
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a slow process. And there are times for her and for me, like I said, depression can creep in. You know, I'm not saying that I live a perfect life, because I'll be the first one to admit that I don't. But we lean on each other. You know, we have the benefit of doing that. And we look to each other for strength, and we look to God for strength. And we incorporate that in our prayers. I have a sister who, for the longest time, I think was kind of in denial about it. And I think my mom and my parents, my mother and father both, I think that they, it wasn't that they didn't want to accept it, but they don't want, no parent wants to hear that kind of news.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just difficult for them to process. But now, at this point, they're both 84 years old. And I see kind of a change in the perspective, in the way that they deal with me and my disease. And what I'm talking about there primarily is we would say, well, I had to have chemo today and I'm really tired. Oh, okay, well, can you still do this? They would ask, well, do you mind stopping here or getting this or whatever? But now they realize that it really plays on my body,
Mm-hmm.
that it really impacts me, in a debilitating way. And they're more understanding. But it's been a real process for them to get to that. And, I think it's a shock. It's a shock to everyone's system to hear that kind of news. It's terrible. Nobody's going to say, "You mean I got cancer? Great." I don't know anybody that's going to say that.
Yeah.
But you can still laugh about it. You can still, there's some things you shouldn't laugh about in life. Somebody on their deathbed, probably not.
Mm-hmm.
But I try to find humor every day.
Yeah. Awesome.
And I try to share that with my friends and family and everybody. I want to educate people about this disease.
Mm-hmm.
I want people to enjoy my company. And if I'm a Debbie Downer or a Donnie Downer or whatever, I can't expect people to walk away saying, "Man, I really liked him," because they're going to be like, "Man, what a drag."
Yeah.
And like I said, I think so much of it I carry with because of my faith.
Yeah. And how do we raise more awareness and more support for male victims of this disease?
Well, like I said, I think the best thing to do is to, first off, call it people's. It's not a woman's disease. It's not a male, it's not male breast cancer. It's not a woman's disease. And there are a lot of women that want to have ownership to it.
Mm-hmm.
They do not want even to have a man suggest that they know what they're going through. And honestly, from a male perspective, we don't know because we're not a female.
Yeah.
You know, so I understand that. I get it. But from the so anyway, I think that once you realize that it's a disease that can be passed on genetically, I think that realization makes the conversation a little different. And so because of that, I think that it's important for us to focus our conversation, as I said earlier, with the women, because they'll listen.
Yeah.
And they will come to the realization that, hey, it's just not a woman's disease. It affects people. So I think it's just a matter of conversation and inclusiveness, you know, that we continue to talk about genetics. Environmental impacts, they can certainly have there are those that are environmentally, and that's probably where my cancer developed from, was my environment from my military exposure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're seeing a great number of male cancer patients that responded to the 9/11 disaster in New York. And, you know, so the respondents to that, the toxins that were in the air and things, and we think, and this is a confusing issue for me, to be honest, because when you think about that, you think, well, if they're inhaling these things, why didn't they get brain cancer? Why didn't they get lung cancer? Why did they get breast cancer? And it's an incredible thing to ponder, because nobody knows. I mean, if we knew why exposure to certain environments create this, maybe we would have a better insight, you know. But we don't know the influences and the impacts of our environments and how they cause this disease to be manifested. So it's just it's kind of crazy.
Do you know if there's any charities or helplines out there for men going through this?
Well, there is the Male Breast Cancer Coalition, and it's probably the largest in the world as far as that goes, that allows for that for men to look to for support, for them to be able to talk to other guys, and you know, to be connected with a support group is a fantastic thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a necessary thing. It's part of that equation that is needed to learn how to cope. Your family is wonderful, your friends are wonderful, but they're very biased, in so much they love you so much that they don't want to attribute to any more psychological pain, you know. And they're not, let's face it, they've not necessarily been through this, so they're not going to have the knowledge that the support group has. And there is that bond that exists with others when you can talk to someone and get that camaraderie because of experiences, you know. So I do think that it's essential. A lot of the hospitals have support groups for cancer patients. The VA hospital in Washington, D.C. does not have a support group for breast cancer patients. They have a support group for cancer patients. And I would, so therein lies the difference. I've actually heard where some organizations, national, worldwide organizations, have actually not wanted to have members of their group exposed to breast cancer patients that are metastatic, because that's, that has the tendency to draw people down. And I think that's a ridiculous, bogus, bullcrap idea and concept. We're all there to help uplift people.
Yeah,
and we should all learn how to deal with the reality of our disease.
Mm-hmm.
And so ignoring it or culling the herd, so to speak, to say, well, you're not part of the same, you don't meet the criteria or what have you. Yes, if you have cancer, and it doesn't matter if you're stage 1 or stage 4, if you have cancer, you should be able to participate in a group and talk about it, because I think that even from my experience, I belong to the National Coalition for Cancer Survivorship, which is based out of Washington, D.C. And it focuses on cancers of all types.
Mm-hmm.
And even though, in any given room, we may have, let's say, out of a population of 80 people in a room, there might be 12 or 15 people that have breast cancer, 3 or 4 that are pancreatic, 2 or 3 that are lung cancer. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, but we all of our experiences lend opportunities for us to learn about how to cope. And like I said, even though we're not necessarily in a support group to find the cure, we're not in a support group to find, what kind of tomato rub to put on our right pinky or something like that. We are in a support group for that mental help to learn how to cope.
Yeah.
And the coping process, it varies so much from one individual to the next.
Mm-hmm.
What works for one may never work for somebody else, but we're individuals. We're each similar in so many ways, but we're each individuals. And so we have to kind of pick and choose and figure out what works best for us. But I'm telling you, and I'm telling your audience right now, get into a support group. If you don't have one, find one. There are those out there. If you want something gender specific, like the Male Breast Cancer Coalition, contact them. But there are support groups in the hospitals, in your community that exist. And bang on the door and tell them that, yes, I want to participate. My cancer may not be the same, but I want to participate because you know what? You will help someone else in that group and they will help you.
Yeah. Yeah. Wise words again. And how important is it for men to check themselves, and how do men check themselves for breast cancer?
It's honestly so simple. The best thing to do is in the shower, Yep. There was this big push back in the 80s for men to check their testicular cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And, and it's basically the same thing. You just rub the breast area, and I'll use one that actually has a breast, since I was looking at my left breast and now I'm on my right. But it's pretty basic, start under your arm here, kind of work your way around and look for a lump,
Mm-hmm.
Look for a discharge or an inverted nipple, or a deformed nipple, any kind of abnormalities that you see in your body in that area. I mean, regardless of how insignificant and how small they may appear to you, it's really worth having it checked out. And more importantly, it seems like I shouldn't even have to say this, but I'm going to. But more importantly, don't just have confirmation that it is in fact cancer. Do something about it. I've met so many guys And they're like, yeah, I don't want to mess with it. But why did you bother then finding out what it was?
Yeah.
You know, do something about it. It's not just because it's breast cancer doesn't mean, like I said, stage 1, 2, and 3 are not going to kill you. Yeah, it might be a pain in the neck or a pain in the chest to go through. But the reality is until it's manifested, until it's metastasized outside of the breast area, till it's grown outside. For me, I have my cancer metastasized into both lungs and into my bones. And, it's a fight every day. It's not one that I put boxing gloves on and bout it out, but it's a mental fight. It's that coping mechanism, learning how to make it as strong as it can be, and as positive as it can be. And I hate to keep going back to that. And I know I sound like a broken record, but the reality is so true.
Yeah.
Make that coping, learn to deal with it, learn to cope with it, and learn to live your life. Because once you do that, you're not even going to think about those other things. They're going to be little spots in the day. When I first got diagnosed, I said, okay, I'm not going to think about this terrible disease more than 2,000-3,000 times a day. Then I got diagnosed with the recurrence, and I said, okay, I might go up maybe as far as 12 or 15,000 times a day. And I think in both cases, I blow it completely out of the water. But it's a fleeting moment,
Yeah.
And it kind of strengthens me. And I know that's kind of weird, but it, doing shows like yours and talking to audiences and really being an advocate, going to Congress and talking to Congress and going to medical groups and learning about this and talking to medical groups about it and my experiences. And it almost in some strange way validates it.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And I know that that's a crazy statement to make. I know that that's like, well, okay, all the people that are listening now just said, well, okay, this guy's a total lunatic,
I don't think not one person would think that.
But I think it's just, like I said, I think in some strange way, it kind of strengthens me. It kind of makes me stronger as an advocate. It makes me better as a person. And I feel like my life is more full because I know that I'm helping others. I know that somewhere, something I've said today, probably not much of what I've said today, but but something that I've said today, at least one thing, if one thing helps one person, man, that's crazy. That just makes me feel wonderful.
Yeah.
And I had a friend of mine who was in the service with me. He lives in California, the other coast, and he called me up and he said, I just wanted to let you know. He said, I'm on my way home from the hospital. And I said, what's going on? He said, well, I found a lump in my breast. And I said, oh no, I was expecting the worst. He said, no, it's good. He said, it was just a little cyst. He said, it's nothing to worry about. But he said, it's because of you that I went and got checked. And so there's that validation.
Yeah.
There's the thing that, if I can have that impact on a friend or somebody I don't know, it doesn't matter to me as long as I'm having that impact, as long as I'm making some kind of a difference. And, that's the wonderful thing about advocacy work. And that's the wonderful thing about doing these type of shows. And, I take every opportunity I get to speak about these things because I think it's so valuable,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
In life, and I'm going to sound like a really old man now. Okay. I'm going to give you my words of wisdom, but in life we get three gifts. I believe we get three gifts. We get to be born, and we get to live our life, but hopefully we live it in a good way so that when we die, we have a wonderful death and experience. But in the life that we live, there is something that we have as human beings that no other species that I know of has. And that is our ability to share information, our ability to share love, our ability to our ability to share knowledge and wisdom and history. And so it's kind of a tenet, it's kind of a mandate that we do this. We do it obviously as parents and as teachers and as educators, but we should just do it because we all benefit from it. Every time we share information, every time we love one another, it just makes life so much better. It makes it so much easier to live. And if I could be remembered for something when I die, I would really like it that people say, man, he knew how to live life, you know, and he shared that with everybody. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Well, on that very, very positive note, I want to thank you for your bravery talking today, and you are a massive inspiration, and I'm honored to speak to you.
Thank you. You have honored me by being on your show. I'm humbled by the opportunities that I get in life to share this. And so thank you. And I hope I hope that if anybody, you know, wants to send me questions or contact me, I'll share my email address with those if you would like.
Yeah.
It's real simple. It's Kirby, Kirby, Lewis, Lewis 49 @gmail.com. And so I'll be, you know, I would be more than happy and very honored to try to respond in any way I can. Don't send me porn, and don't, unless it's really good porn. Don't send me porn, and don't tell me how I just inherited $10 billion from somebody in some other country. And there's one other thing. Oh, and I'm so wealthy already. I don't need to know how to get rich. So I have a very rich life, and I don't need any more anybody else telling me how to do that. But other than that, please, address your questions appropriately. And
I'll put your email in the description of this video when it goes to YouTube.
Very good.
Kirby,
thank you, John.
Thank you so much.
And I've looked forward to it. Thank you.
Good. You take care.
Thanks.
And keep living the life, man.
Absolutely. And you as well. Try to get those I mean, they're insidious, hideous, little mean, aggravated little gremlin thoughts that get into our minds that make us focus on the negatives of life. Yeah. So try to eradicate them with positive energy, Definitely. Awesome. It's been a pleasure.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye now. Bye-bye.